that our minds always want to be active, and as you said, it could be distraction, but it could just be something else. Our minds always want to be active. Therefore, we experience thoughts. We keep experiencing thoughts. They keep coming into our minds. Do you notice that? Now, the more we work with the mind, the more we realize that thoughts appear by themselves. So we use the term involuntary. There's a process of thoughts appearing involuntarily in our minds. Straight away, what this tells us is we are not in control, which may run counter to the way we believe things are, because most of us think we should be able to control our minds. Had you ever thought that? That you should be in control? I should be able to control my mind. I should be able to control my thoughts. If I don't want to think about something, I have the power not to. If you do something wrong and I choose to ignore you, I can do so. I will not think about it. Exercise like this. What we realize is thinking is involuntary. It just happens. Then we come to mindfulness training, which is a process. And what comes into mind when you hear the word mindfulness? What possibility presents itself? Or should I put it differently? What do you want out of mindfulness training?
To be here.
To be here.
Now.
And now, to be present in the moment. Good. I want that. Anything else?
Some kind of peace of mind.
Some kind of peace of mind. Good. I want to be present. I want to have a peaceful mind.
To not be pulled around by habits and...
To not be overrun by habits. Okay. Peace of mind in the present, not overrun by habits. Can you be those things on demand?
Not at the moment.
When can you?
Well, I was hoping.
Maybe at some point in the future.
Yeah.
Not right now. All right. So, maybe in our mindfulness training, the first thing that we need to do is look at the state of the mind we're bringing to the party. Because mindfulness is a form of mind training. So it's going to be a case of training the mind. Now, as soon as we look at it from this angle, the question arises, how do you train the mind? We're very familiar, for example, with training the body, and we're very familiar with training our minds to do specific things. Like you probably all trained your minds at school, so you can do mathematics, you know about geography, you can think things through and all that. So we're familiar with training the mind to do things. Yep. But now we're looking at training the mind itself. And what is that actually going to involve? It starts by looking at the state of the mind and getting some sense of the way the energy of the mind works. And the first thing we notice is it's running riot. It is not under control. It's doing its own thing. That's why I use this word involuntary. Thoughts and emotions, moods and mind states are appearing involuntarily in our minds all the time. Why would you suppose this is happening? Yes?
Partly because of your senses side of things that you can see, hear, smell.
Excellent. So part of it is because our senses, our 5 physical senses, are always receiving stimuli, and we're responding to those. If we take this one step further, what we find out is that the mind, what we call mind, which is abstract, works in the same way. There is what we choose to call mind, which of course isn't really there, but it receives stimuli. Things appear before it, and it engages those. The things that appear, for example, to your eye are visual objects. So your eye is a physical organ. When it's functioning, it experiences the appearance of physical objects, and it becomes conscious of them. Your ear works in the same way. It's an organ, it perceives sounds and becomes conscious. Your mouth tastes, your skin feels, your nose smells. So you've always got 3 factors. You've got the sense object, or the sense base, which is, let's say, the eye. Then you've got the visual object. Then you've got the connection between the two, out of which consciousness of seeing arises. Those 3 factors are necessary for seeing to happen. Then when it comes to the mind, the same principle applies. The mind is like a sense base, except it's abstract. Thoughts, moods, emotions, and mind states appear before the mind. So, in the classical literature, they are called mind objects. Then connection takes place between the two. And that is when the mind engages, let's say, a thought, and thinking then commences. So, if we understand this, we realize that thoughts appear in the same way as those sounds coming up off the road. They appear. Now, the difference is they're appearing within our internal environment, and their origin is different from the sound on the road. The sound of that traffic is clearly separate from me. I know that. And I have no control over it, at least relatively speaking. So it's easy to understand that that vehicle going by making that sound is not me. It's separate from me. When it comes to the mind, it's different. Thoughts appear within my internal environment. Mind perceives the thought, and then what does it do?
Judges it?
Judges, evaluates, yes, and then?
Engages.
Engages, this is the point. It engages, and it makes it mine. My thought. My emotion. Then it goes one step further. What is that step?
Preference.
Well, there's preference for sure, but it constructs its sense of identity around that thought or that feeling. So, for example, if a happy feeling arises in my mind engages it, identifies with happy feeling, and it says, now I am happy. So my identity has become subsumed into the happiness. And it's the same with all the emotions. I may experience a painful emotion. Something might have upset me. I might become depressed. And my identity becomes involved with that feeling. And this is where so much human suffering arises. Because, as one of you said, we're always evaluating. So we're viewing our internal environment with preference. I want to have a certain category of emotions and feelings and thoughts. I do not want to have another category. We're very clear about this, all of us. So I want to be happy. I want to feel peaceful. I want to be loving and all those things. I don't want to be unhappy, sad, depressed, angry, anxious. And we're preoccupied with this all the time. We're constantly checking out our internal environment. And this is why when we meet each other, we say, how are you? What we're really saying is, what's going on in your internal environment? Is it okay in there? And then, generally, we tell lies. Because we know that what's required is always to be happy. So we say things like, I'm fine. Now, you may actually be cracking up. But generally you'll say, I'm fine. Or, if you want to be a total social failure, you start telling people in detail what's really going on. And you usually only get 1 or 2 chances at that. And then, first of all, people stop asking you how you are, but you tell them anyway. And then mysteriously, you stop meeting people because they see you coming and they go, nice. So, we're all obsessed by what's going on in our minds. And this is the human condition. This is regarded as totally normal. We're all sitting here, you're sitting here right now, the same as I am, obsessed with what we're feeling. It's not an active, obvious obsession, but it's there. For example, if I was suddenly to do something that upset or frightened you, you would be extremely offended. Wouldn't you? I mean, you're very nice people, so you've probably got quite a large range of tolerance. But if I pushed beyond that, there would come a point where you decided this character, Rob Nairn, is a bit over the top, and I won't go to any more of his lectures. You could well decide that anyway, but for other reasons. Now, what actually happens in a situation like that? What is the actual dynamic that takes place? Your preference system is violated. You're not getting what you want, which is bad enough. But even worse, you're getting what you don't want. And on those 2 bases, the mind makes decisions. But the interesting thing is there's nothing substantial there. It's just this movement of impressions, thoughts, feelings, and so on. And we're doing the same thing to ourselves all the time. We're always wanting something. We're either wanting it to happen this way or wanting it to stop happening this way. Wanting to change it. Yes? How many of you watch television? Listen to the radio? Play music? Eat or drink mood-altering substances? I mean, you know, that includes alcohol or cigarettes.
Tea.
All we're doing is trying to create a satisfied preference all the time. And the thing is, there's nothing wrong with that. But we become attached. And in being attached, we get stuck. And then we suffer. So the psychology of suffering is fundamentally having what I don't want or not having what I want. Those are the 2 obvious ones. And then, worst of all, being bored. Boredom is actually more intolerable than pain, than most forms of pain. Isn't that a strange thing? We would rather be experiencing a painful emotion than just being bored. So there are the 3 origins of suffering for human beings. None of us wants to suffer, but we do because we are compulsively trapped in these three dimensions. I say compulsively because our power of choice is overridden by other forces within us. I haven't chosen to be like this consciously, but I have chosen to be like it at another level. But all this is a consequence of my other choices. I choose to pursue preference. That's what we do. We all choose to